Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Cancer, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of September. I hope you are well. I'm using the Tarot of the Abyss for you today. Here it is. I have to say, I already recorded your reading, both the YouTube version and the extended for Vimeo and Patreon. But when I came to upload it, it seemed that I hadn't recorded the YouTube one at all, and so I have a free-floating extended, which I think I might put onto Patreon for anybody who wants to see it. It might have some extra information. I can't even remember what it was about, and it might be that this one is slightly different, or it might be that there are things in the other one that are that are relevant. I might put it on YouTube actually, just as a bonus reading for anybody who's interested. So let's have a look and see what's going on with you, Cancer. 3 cards for Cancer, please. We have the Ten of Swords. Good Ten of Swords in your recent past. Current energy, please. Fuck me. We've got the Page of Pentacles in reverse. Come up for you there. Don't think I could do that again if I tried. And what's coming towards Cancer? We have the Seven of Wands. So it looks like you're going through the mill just a little bit at the moment. We've got the Eight of Wands at the bottom of the deck. It's a card that speaks of often incoming communication. It can be quite swift, things like email and things like that. But it can also speak to a building in momentum, and particularly in the Tower of the Abyss, we've got these geese in flight over the wands here. And I do think there's something about the way you are in a situation at the moment that is requiring some elevation of perspective. Because it looks like things are tricky. Tell me about this Ten of Swords. We have the Devil card. And, Five of Pentacles hopped out there. What about the Page of Pentacles in reverse, please? We have the Three of Wands. And we have the Four of Cups. And the Seven of Wands, please. We've got the Nine of Wands. And we've got the Two of Swords. Right, the very first thing, I think, got the Knight of Swords at the bottom of the deck. Another card that speaks about communication, swift communication. The very first thing that I feel of this, the thing that I heard as the cards were coming out was non-starter. Something that you are working on is a non-starter, and we'll get into that in a second. I think it's probably relevant that we talk about the fact that Mercury retrograde is on its way in. It's nothing to be afraid of, but it does rather halt things. It's an energy of kind of slowing down, taking some time to be reflective about what's going on and making sure that you are making the correct decisions moving forwards. It's a real energy of dotting all the I's and crossing all of the T's. And something that you've been trying to get off the ground, whether it's a relationship or it's going to be different for each of you, it looks to me like a non-starter. This is an energy of going back to the drawing board and seeing what it is that you have missed. Now, in your recent past, we have the Ten of Swords. And like I said when it came out, this is the good Ten of Swords. There are two in, to be fair, the other, it's more uncomfortable, but it's still a good Ten of Swords. The other depiction is the one that you would usually associate with the Rider-Waite, right? So we see somebody who's got swords sticking out of them everywhere, and it's deeply uncomfortable, but tens indicate completion, and so it's an energy of rock bottom. This depiction is slightly different, and I do very much like what Anatorian's done with this. We've got this owl looking squarely into the eye of a man who is looking squarely back, and the swords are within the feathers of the owl, right? So both of these characters here in their own way speak of wisdom. They speak of the wisdom that comes through experience. And this dude here, because he's depicted as being slightly older, has that feeling of wisdom that has come through age and experience and maturity. And there's even a little smile playing on his lips here as he's looking straight into the owl's eyes. It's like understanding that past mistakes that you have made, or past experiences that you've had, even if they've been uncomfortable, have really taught you something valuable. And I think that you've come to the point where you've been able to see that now, because there's no fear here. Right? He's looking in the eyes of this owl. They're looking deeply into each other's eyes, actually, as equals. What have we got underneath here? We've got the devil and we've got the Five of Pentacles. Now, you know, the devil can be lots of things. It can be codependence, it can be toxicity, it can even be things like substance abuse and stuff like that. But when you really get down to the meaning of the devil, it is all about how we approach things from a place of fear, right? We're afraid that things won't be as fun. You know, that things will be harder. And it's all illusory. This is the point of it, right? It's all illusory. The devil is about taking your consent and sitting you somewhere and making you sit there because you consent to do so. And that can be quite a difficult thing to get our heads around after a while, because, well, for a while. Because if we feel trapped and we feel stuck, invariably the words that come out of our mouths is, oh, well, I can't do anything else. I can't do anything differently. You know, why have they done this? So there's often a victimization aspect to this, right? And we end up feeling very, very stuck. Right? What we don't realize is that we are consenting to feeling stuck. And further than that, we have the Five of Pentacles, which is a card of poverty. Now, that doesn't have to be pecuniary poverty. Like, it doesn't have to involve money, although it absolutely can do. It can be a poverty of affection. It can be a poverty of care from people, or it can be a fear of those things. And if you tie those two things together, then, you know, codependence is something that comes through quite strongly. But again, if you push through the Five of Pentacles, what you've got there is a missing of things that are essential for life. And they start with you. And this is the message here. This is the wisdom that comes from these three cards together, is that at every single point you have the power to change something. Now, if you feel like you're totally stuck and totally trapped, then it is because you're not looking at something from one of the many other angles that you could be looking at, right? Now, the fact that these have come up underneath that particular Ten of Swords, I think is an incredibly positive thing, because it does speak to the way that you have grown and the different perspective that you now have on everything. But more importantly, the different perspective that you have on yourself and the value that you present by virtue of existing, you know? It's not to say that all the work is done, because the work is never done. But certainly you've come an incredibly long way. When we get into your current energy and your future energy, though, just over the next 4 weeks or so, and certainly where you are right now, it feels like there are lots of things that you are trying to do and they are just not really taking shape in the way that you want them to. You know, I said right at the beginning, these two shadow cards are talking about communication, and one of the other things about Mercury retrograde is that it does tend to have people talking at cross purposes. You know, people are find it a little easier to take offence during this time, you know, because what you said came out wrong, or what somebody else says to you came out wrong. Meaning gets missed, and this energy of kind of going back to the drawing board and being quite detail oriented and making sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's extends to your verbal communications too. Make sure that you say what you mean and you mean what you say, because if there's any subtext anywhere, it's going to change. It's going to change what other people are taking from those communications. I mean, you know, the same goes with you, really. You know, extend a bit of compassion towards other people in terms of what you think they mean. Like, give them a chance to properly explain themselves, because this is a time of year where people tend to jump to conclusions about things, kind of go off the handle. But you have the Page of Pentacles here, and it's in the reverse. Now, the pages, when they appear in the upright, they talk about a change of direction that's coming in for us, and they're generally very welcome. They indicate a kind of a starting level with something. But it means that there's something that you've got and you're taking it in a different direction with the Page of Pentacles, which is sometimes a card of studying. It could be that you are choosing not to study anymore if you are a student or something like that of any description. Maybe what you thought would light you up is actually now turning out to be a total ball ache, and you're just not enjoying it at all. This Three of Wands is about the actions that we take in the day-to-day. And he's got his back to us. He's looking towards the horizon there. It is something that we thought we wanted, but actually once we get into the process of doing it, we realise with this Four of Cups that it's not nearly as much fun as we thought. Now, it doesn't have to be that you're a student. This could be extending into any of the areas of your life that are currently occupying your mind. I mean, the student thing is just a useful example. But the takeaway from the current energy is whatever you are trying to start at this point doesn't look like it's got legs. It feels like it's a bit of a dead end there, and you might have to walk a little bit away down the road before you've worked out that it's a dead end. But you certainly seem to be in that energy right now of realizing that there's nowhere to go with this one. Three of Wands. It's interesting. We've got the Nine of Wands and we've got the Five of Pentacles there. Five of Pentacles appearing again, and so your current energy now, and then the way that it ties into this Ten of Swords in your recent past here is like that realization that you just had. Just because you had the realization, it doesn't mean that you are truly shielded from ever exhibiting those kind of behaviors before. But remember, if you have a predisposition towards doing that, it is consciously is the way that we don't go down those roads. If you let your subconscious take over, it will go to the default, and that seems to be what is possible with what you are trying to do right now. This Nine of Wands, talking about the building of boundaries and also in some ways building the resilience into, says, yeah, you've been here before. Like, we recognize the early stages now in a way that we didn't before, and maybe, just maybe, it's a better idea not to go down this road. If there's a sign there that says cul-de-sac, chances are it's probably a cul-de-sac. And I wonder if there's kind of a deeper, it's kind of to weave this, this aspect of communication in, whether there's a deeper lesson going on here in your current energy of noticing when the sign says cul-de-sac, Because are you looking for subtext with a situation, and do you think that you found it? My guess is possibly. And so what looks to be quite helpful here is to take a step back and just make sure that you're looking at all the signs and you're listening to what they say. I don't feel like there's anything dreadful on the other end of this little road, this little dead end, but it is literally that. It's a dead end. Yeah. And we've got the Ace of Cups. There's a possibility here that a lesson that you have already learned is reappearing in new clothes, and it's time to pay attention. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that the way that you're going, if you carry on down this just a little way, that there isn't a side street or something like this that is useful to you, that's actually the way that you need to go. When you're looking at your sat-nav sometimes, and it's trying to get you to go away, and you're looking at it and you're like, it's a thing, and then there's this funny little corner, little turn off at the end that you wouldn't have seen unless you'd gone to the end of the road. I mean, it's possible that there's something about that. But this Ace of Cups appearing here, and the Temperance card, actually, interestingly, and the Lovers card appearing underneath here. It's like there's an energy of newness here for you. There's an energy of initiation of something, but there's a need to go a little bit slower. There's a need to pay attention, to make sure that you are paying attention to the signs and not to what you think the signs say. This is not a time to be emotionally dyslexic. Cancer, like, make sure that you are reading everything properly. And if you're not quite sure, then be direct, ask for clarification, because this Temperance card and the Ace of Cups are beautiful, but they're very much talking about healing and self-respect, compassionate approaches, all that kind of thing. But it's very much centered around you and not other people. So, was it last month? I feel like it was last month, where there was the possibility of a new relationship coming in. If that is you, and that is correct, if I am remembering that correctly, then realize that a relationship isn't a binary state, as in good relationship or bad relationship. And, sometimes when we're circling the possibility of a relationship and we're not sure if we're ready to get into that or not, we're like, I've got to see if this person actually means what they say and says what they mean, whether they are actually everything that they're making themselves out to be, whether we are actually compatible. There's not one line that once you cross that, you're like, everything's fucking magical, everything's perfect. Relationships take work, they take compromise, but they also take awareness. And that present awareness needs to be there all the time. Because the way that good relationships go bad is just by everybody assuming that it's a good relationship, and they're ignoring the signs, ignoring the red flags, ignoring whatever, or missing the opportunity to address things about our behaviour or other people's behaviour that could be sorted more easily earlier on. By the time they actually get to the point where, steam's coming out of people's ears and stuff, too much water has gone under the bridge. This talks about a conscious choice here, this Lover's card. It talks about union and coming together. And maybe an even deeper kind of interpretation here is not about the validity of what you are trying to engage with here. Maybe it's perfectly okay. What is being challenged is your notion that there is that binary state of good or bad, and it's literally just a tripwire that you go over at some point. It's everything happens incrementally. And although the Lover's card is often considered to be those big decisions that we make, where we stand up and we make those decisions, like sometimes those can be the little micro adjustments that we make, where we let something go when really we should have mentioned it, or when we hyper focus on something and actually it's really not fucking important, right? Bringing the conscious mind to those decisions every time, whether it's a relationship or whether it's something else altogether, that feels to me like it's where you're being guided to challenge yourself. Again, like the work is never done, and we fall into a trap when we assume that it is, because we start looking, we start measuring things against our past experiences. So, I've spoken about this before. I've probably spoken about it to you a considerable number of times, because my Cancer is in my Venus is in Cancer. Beg your pardon. I came out of one emotionally abusive relationship, and I was like, that's never happening again. I'm never putting up with any sort of that sort of shit again. It's not going to happen. And then when I met my next husband, what I had was a checklist of all the bad points of the old husband, and I'm like, no, doesn't have that, doesn't have that, doesn't have that. And once I'd gone through the list of all the bad things, I was like, well, he's fucking sterling. That's excellent. And I threw the list away, and I committed in that way that we do, fully with everything that I had, and immediately slid into a totally codependent relationship where the abuse was just wearing different clothes. He didn't do those things. He did a whole heap of other things that were equally as abusive, if not more so. Well, no, I think they were probably pretty evenly weighted, actually. And so, in keeping with the Mercury retrograde energy of really making sure that you are paying attention to the right things, it is understanding that energy actually needs to travel with you. It needs to be a consistent companion with you in every experience and interaction that you have. Now, when we come into what's coming towards you in September, we have the Seven of Wands, we have the Nine of Wands, and we have the Two of Swords. And this does feel to me like it feels like confrontation, Cancer, to be honest. You know, we've got, what have we got down here? We've got the Eight of Wands, which is followed by the Two of Wands here, right? So we've got possibly things escalating, we've got some momentum occurring, but we also have this aspect of communication, right? And your need, specifically your need, to elevate a little bit above the situation and see things for the bigger picture, which seems to be leading you to a crossroads. Again, not all crossroads are huge, big T-junctions at the end of the road. You know, sometimes they're just a little path and there's just a fork either way and there aren't any signs. And you have to sit there for a moment and go, well, you know, I'm actually trying to travel east. Which one of these is going to take me closer to what that is? You know, sometimes that's quite an intuitive position that you have to take because there isn't really much of an evidential basis for you to make your decisions. But we also have the Knight of Swords, and we have this, which way around you want to put it, this way or this way. We have this Knight of Swords, and we have this Three of Swords too. It feels like things are coming up to the surface that are going to make you feel very defensive this month, Cancer. And what it feels to me is extremely important for you to take away from this is that it is not you being picked on. This isn't necessarily I don't know, you feel quite triggered. And interestingly enough, what we've got underneath there is the Knight of Wands. Speaking of being triggered, it's always a card that comes to my mind even when I say the word triggered, because I don't feel like the Knight of Wands gets triggered by stuff, because he is an energy who is entirely in the moment, right? It's not old wounds that get triggered when you see the Knight of Wands. I mean, although, you know, possibly it might be because lack of commitment and all that sort of thing, but his ability to be present means that he judges every situation on the merits as they present in front of him, right? That consistent companion of awareness that you're bringing to everything that you're doing. This feels a little bit like going off at the deep end. Knight of Swords with the Three of Swords, the Eight of Wands with the Two of Wands, kind of like almost like a fight or flight situation going on here. No, I don't think that there's any, you know, danger to your physical person or anything like this. This feels like it's a very emotional position for you. But we've got the Nine of Wands and we've got the Two of Swords. I mean, this feels like a testing of boundaries, or at least a perception that your boundaries are being tested, when in reality, the way that it feels to me that it's actually happening, it's bringing your attention to your boundaries to make sure that they're in the right place. And they might be, but they might not. And the reason that I say that they might not is because of this Two of Swords. There's something here that you are not seeing. Now, it could be that your boundaries are in a great place and it is the person that you're dealing with or the situation that you're dealing with that is somehow presenting in a way that is misleading. Let's put it that way. Or it could be that your boundaries actually just need a little bit of work, because boundaries are not designed to stay static. They kind of move around as and when you require it. We assume that there's a hard line and you don't cross that, but for different people there are different levels of boundary. And that seems to me, with this Seven of Wands, where you are going to be sat this month, is analysing those. Excuse me. Yeah, Ace of Swords. And making sure that you understand things clearly as they actually exist. Thank you. Five of Cups. Making sure that you are not focusing on the wrong thing, that you are not reacting to past triggers. You know, we've got the Ten of Cups at the bottom of the deck there, and obviously, Cancer, that is extremely important to you. You know, you love to be of service for people, but the experiences that you've had, well, certainly as you've come to a state of awareness over the last few years, is that can be problematic. And so we're working on presenting very cleanly into situations so that you can still show up and you still can give, but you don't do it at the detriment of yourself. Now, whilst it might feel kind of punishing to have this energy come up for you this month, I think it's incredibly rewarding because it makes sure that you are doing exactly what we were talking about there, showing up cleanly in your emotions. I think on balance, there's something a little bit wonky about where your boundaries are currently positioned, and there's certainly something that seems to be stabbing into the heart that is associated with the past rather than what is in front of you. And so take your time this month, right, with everything. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Don't let people walk over you, but give people the benefit of the doubt and let them show you through their behaviour or their words or whatever it is, what the situation actually is, rather than judging it on what has happened before that you are projecting onto this situation. Now, I think this just kind of sounds a bit like, oh God, September's going to be shit. No, like I do think triggers are our friends because, you know, at this point, if I get triggered by something, I'm absolutely fascinated. I'm like, oh, what is this now? We dig around in this. And it still happens. You know, the more work you do, the fewer triggers there are, and that's wonderful. But it does mean when they come up, they tend to be quite big. Your triggers are your friends because they're showing you what needs to be healed. And if whatever situation, I mean, it might be the non-starting quality of what it is that you're trying to get off the ground that is triggering you at this point. And, you know, it might be like, I want more. I'm feeling rejected because this isn't moving faster. This is not moving at the rate to which I am accustomed. Well, fuck, it must be a rejection of me. Is it? Or is it just that this is playing out now in a way that is much more sensible and much more mature and much more taking this into consideration? These triggers don't need to be excoriating. They don't need to gut you like a fish. You just need to have a certain level of objective detachment from your own emotions, enough to be able to look at them when they're going wild and being like, there's obviously something here that needs a little bit of work. The plus side is, on the other side of that, you might be much more comfortable with the pace at which things are developing, you know? It might not be that it's a dead end. It might just be that at this point you are kind of perceiving it to be that way. And the reality is it's just moving slow. And that's okay because it's moving on good foundations, you know? This is really, really interesting, Cancer. So I'm going to go over to Vimeo now. If you would like to join me over there, you are, of course, as ever, utterly welcome. You could join my Patreon community if you would like to do that, and then you'll get access to all the extendeds, including the ones that I just do randomly, apparently, without recording YouTube versions of them. All of the extra stuff for no extra cost. So you could check out your Venus sign or your moon sign or whatever. But if neither of those things are your bag, that is also absolutely fine. Just watch your tongue and, more importantly, watch your emotions. If you're not a meditator, perhaps you ought to do that so that you can detach from your emotions enough to know that they are not you. They are just subconscious responses. And then you can work with them, okay? And know that I love you all very, very much. And I will see you soon.